The question is very good, but the answer is very hard. It's hard to answer to a question like that because there are practical reasons why these two narratives, the local and the dominant, continuous, are often incompatible. If I speak just about Eastern Europe, which problems I know best, what is the problem there, that when it comes to the contemporary or even modern art, you have very few voices that are wrote about that, something as professional art history. You don't really have a competition, so it's very limited material from what you are deriving ideas of how this integration would be possibly taking place. I think any assimilation of the marginal narrative into the dominant one, it also requires the revisions into this main dominant narrative, which is, of course, of ideological nature very often, where this continuity of the Western world is coming from, and why the histories of other worlds are constantly disrupted, as Zdenka Badovinac would say. She did the exhibition called Interrupted Histories, or Impossible Histories. That was the title of the book about the Yugoslav neo-avant-garde that Miško Košovaković edited, or similar examples. But all these examples are the kind of ideas that map the problems that are put on the table and can be further used for the further research and think tanking about what is the possible next step out of that. What I think as the most acute and crucial problem is to actually change things on the very structural cultural, political level, establish institutions that would support scholarship of this, of the contemporary art and modern art, that would organize residencies, that would support young scholars, art historians to meet their colleagues from a similar context but from a different part of the world, and that together they might find new strategies of how to deal with these issues. It's very interesting for the neo-avant-garde in Yugoslavia, how it was inspired by especially Russian historic avant-garde, and how there was this kind of attachment to the basically socialist project, like when it comes to the discussion of the experiencing and artistically responding to socialism in socialist countries, like Western audience or spectator would often think that critique was basically directed toward socialism itself. No, it was directed toward the system, toward the rigid state socialism that was contradictory in many ways, as I mentioned today in my talk, but not that there was this desire and this utopia of the, proper socialism. Slovenia needs international or global context. It's too small country to be culturally isolated or self-sufficient. So this idea that there is some kind of international or transnational avant-garde or some kind of movement which is creating the base for the artists to have something in common, to share some kind of common space. It's an essential thing, but the question is who is creating and who is controlling the global relations nowadays, and what is global art? Is it global art, the art that is shown and exhibited within the global art market and, within the global art system, or is it global art, the art that is critically addressing issues that are created as a effect of globalization, that are often actually creating disconnections between the contexts and nations, and they are actually producing the anti-globalizing, anti-international effect, producing refugees, producing destroyed country, producing destroyed lives, careers, and so on. So it's just really a question of a definition. For the regions that are marginalized, every interest is good, because within regions that are marginalized, you also often have the kind of similarly stereotypical view of the people that belong to that region of themselves. So it is always good to hear a view from the outside, like when this after the fall of socialism, when this international exhibition started taking place in Europe, there was a lot of fancy curators visiting Ljubljana and other countries, and there was a lot of people who would say, how can they do the exhibition if they don't know anything? But there is also something to come to the place and have your antenna open and read it in a unique way, in a way that I can never read it myself, because I live there, and I can read something new about myself through your view from a distance, or coming or bringing with it the feeling of another world. So I think mixtures are good, going out of your own world and exploring another world. Doesn't matter how much you know at the beginning, you will know more in the end.